to Emuna is our future. Tshuva on Tshuva. Tshuva on the Tshuva is a huge concept, and this is going to be the basis of our weekly Emuna class. We really welcome you here, and we're excited today to share this because it's so fundamental for where we are sitting right now. We're sitting in Shabbat Chazak, this wonderful institute from Shalom Arush, someone who's one of the Arush, the heads of Baal Teshuva for our generation. And to be able to be here in this time, in this place, historically, with everything, with all the current events going down, it's a pretty pumping news cycle already from the beginning of 2020. And the news is that in order to really get everything to a good, healthy place, we're going to have to do tshuva on the tshuva. That is the news, the big news, the biggest news there is. Personally, I explained in the first class on this series of Emuna is our future. The concept is guidance for Baal Teshuva, and my tongue-in-cheek is, and it's based on tzaddikim, is that everybody needs to be Baal Teshuva. That means everybody, everyone in the whole world, not just the Jewish people. Everybody needs to, on some level, do tshuva. Excuse me. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is, just hearing from Brene Brown again, from Lewis Howes, one of the people I listen to podcast-wise, and they're talking about vulnerability, being real, facing your imperfections. And that's something which is a Jewish concept in all our Musa Svarim, Chassidish Svarim, and all the different Torahs, and especially now in the time we're going into with Shabbat Chazak, Shabbat Chazak, Pashas V'yechi, Yaakov is Lebedik. The person here recording asked me if I could bring the class into a bit more of a concise form. So we're going to do our best. I'm not feeling 100% well. I mentioned that last week. We should all pray for a healthy winter. Thank God it's raining, which in Eretz Yisrael means shefa, and bracha means lots of divine abundance is coming into the world. But what does it mean when Rebbe Nachman says tshuva on the tshuva in the Likutei Moharan and his holy sefer? What does it mean? So for me, like I said already in the previous class, we spoke about being about tshuva and the journey that I personally had, and we can go into a bit more. And there's also, thank God, like Rav Shalom Arush and his God and Emuna series. What does it mean to do tshuva on the tshuva? This is something which is so fundamental to our generation, because thank God there is an awe of tshuva, there is an awakening. Like we're in messianic times, the Mashiach, the Messiah, is not here. But maybe he is physically, maybe there's some sort of awakening going on, but in terms of his revelation, we don't see it right now. But we are in messianic biblical times. I just talked about every single prophecy, everything's happening. I'm not that kind of speaker to start explaining how current events are like this and like that. That's not my job. Excuse me. What I will focus on is this realness, this wholesomeness, this organic journey that all of us can do in a real, positive, happy. Yes, with simcha, with joy. As Rav Shalom Arush says, that one of the biggest keys to tshuva is simcha. Simcha we spoke about last week also. Anyone can go back. And we go into this time of Shovavim, with the brachas of Yaakov, our father, before we go into this special time on a daily level, that we are in the ikvus de Mashiach. We are in the time just before the Messiah comes. And it's called Erev Shabbos. So there's a special power of tshuva in the world before Shabbos every week, and before the ultimate Yom Shekula Shabbos. There's a special light and awe, just like we talk about in our holy svarim and our holy texts. This ability to purify ourselves through mikveh, through toveling. That was the eitzah from the Baal Shem Tov that became so mishpashet. Everyone, thank God nowadays you can go anywhere in the world, thanks to Chabad and other organizations, even Satmar, they set up mikvahs everywhere. So a person can physically purify themselves on a spiritual level, and something personally which has been a big part of my journey. But then there's this, yes, very important to be happy, someone just wrote. And then there's this concept, not just of that, that's on our life, of mikveh, there's simcha. Simcha is a huge thing there. Rizal brought down, we spoke about that. And then there's tshuva. Tshuva is something which was relevant in the times of Adam Arishon. From the first man, he did tshuva on that first Erev Shabbos, that first day before Shabbat, where there was the first creation of man, and there was the challenge of the snake, and all the different accusers and struggles of finding his path of tshuva and return. And he wrote the famous song that we say in Psalms, in Tehillim 92, of Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos. And over there we see this power of tshuva. If you read the words carefully in English, whatever language it is that you relate to, and you see in those letters, Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos, Psalm Tehillim 92, you see David HaMelech, who was also one of the heads of tshuva, and Reuven, the son of Yaakov, also we see in this week's Parsha, Rishon Oni. There's a power of tshuva going on right now in the fact spiritually we're in this time, and physically and practically and even emotionally. There's a light, like I said before, of vulnerability, of being real, of not pretending to be like, this perfect spiritual guru or rabbi, and I'm gonna like bless you all. No, seriously, I'm not on that level. Thank God I'm connected to people who really are. But what I will do is be very, very raw and real about how hard it is to balance out the tshuva process. There's tremendous light that comes down that gives you a connection to transformation that's real and lasting. So, for example, what happens? It's like this. This is how I saw it, and this is how I see it many times from many people, that this light of tshuva, it's called in Kabbalistic Sfarim, Gadlus Rishon, this tremendous light comes down, Arizal explains, and we get this like crazy revelation of godliness. Like people call it like when Shine came, like one of my friends, they call it like in prison, and he had this like powerful moment, and this powerful moment is gone around and around. But the key is not just about the powerful at the beginning. This I don't even know the word. Maybe someone can post it underneath. Yeah. But someone just said there's only a Emuna and Hashem. That's the truth. So you have this clarity of that. Like for me, it was so clear when I remember sitting in front of a very famous rabbi, and he was trying to persuade me from epiphany. That's the word, epiphany. He was trying to persuade me from not to go to yeshiva. Like just stay in London, carry on your life there, slowly. But I was at a point. I was like flying at a whole different level. I was looking at this guy, and I was seeing Hashem. I was seeing spirituality talking to me. The world was opening up, all its opportunities. I felt like the Mashiach, the Gula was coming, and I was sitting in London working in a warehouse at that time for my father's company, and it was just unbelievable to think like I could go from that place, and suddenly I'm going to go back to Eretz Yisrael, to Jerusalem, and I'm going to experience this light of revelation. That was the vision I was having. It was so profound and clear. It was just before the year 2000. We're already now 20 years later, 2020, and everyone was talking about the world awakening, the change that's about to take place, and already with globalization, with the internet, and everyone was very excited, like what's going to be. And it was so obvious to me personally, like God was communicating to me and taking me on this journey, and everything that I was thinking and feeling was being revealed more and more through the learning I was doing. So the Torah was alive, just like Yaakov was alive when this week's Parsha is giving life to the Jewish people. This is the kind of like Judaism I was like, wow. But then what happens? You come, you do tshuva, you slowly transform yourself. Externally, it's very easy to come by, do a lot of external changes. But then there's all like your paraphernalia, like Moshe Weinberger was saying in his class recently, like you get the Breslev kit, or whatever it is, whatever group you join. Like I was in the mainstream yeshiva like Osameh, but you join this yeshiva and you get the kit, the hat and the this and all the different books, and like suddenly you're doing all the movements. It's all very external, but the point is, once these revelations happen, you have what's called a katnus, like it's a katnus sheni, where you're no longer in such a revelation. You're not the katnus rishon, like you now have experienced what it's like to be connected to Hashem, but now you're having a katnus sheni where you don't feel so connected. Suddenly you look around and it feels like, wait a minute, have I just joined this cult? All these guys shaking around and these women, and they're so dressed up, and I don't know, like you start freaking out a little bit. Or like me, you get married, and Baruch Hashem, and you conform and you do everything right, and you do what's called precious. You separate from the world, had no internet and no connection to anything, and you're just pure. You throw out all your non-Jewish music and purify your heart just for the Eibishter, for his Tzaddikim, for the light of Hashem. And then suddenly you realize what is most common, and it's very common, and it's a very common reality now, talked about in the work world and all different places, the idea of burnout. You burn out, God forbid. A person can burn out, and that initial inspiration doesn't feel so close. It's a memory somewhere in your mind. Like me personally, I have on my screensaver and my WhatsApp on my phone is like that memory when I first walked into the old city, my backpack and my earrings and my muscle showing and the whole thing and the vibe and the big couple, and I was like, wow, the beginning, of Judaism, walking in the old city and everything was talking to me, and I was singing Bob Marley and Mashiach's coming, and I had that image just to remind me of that moment, which I do think is a good idea, just to have a few reminders of those initial moments. But even with that, you're burning out. What are you going to do about it? Because you're not feeling that light like you did. So you go learn, you connect to tzaddikim, you go speak to righteous people, and you start developing a relationship with Hashem in a more real way. And what happens slowly, after a lot of hard work, and commitment and perseverance, and once again, we said, being real, vulnerable, you realize you're going to have to do tshuva on the tshuva. This is Rebbe Nachman's tremendous advice that we all need. I'm doing tshuva on tshuva. That I did tshuva, but I have to do tshuva on the tshuva. And that's a constant process. Because was it real enough? Did it combine my past? Did it combine what I'm into? Did it use all my talents and kochos and my being? Does it include my soulmate and the people I'm friends and family with? Does it have a complete, organic, wholesome, unified picture? And that is the goal of tshuva, and that's the Gadol Sheni, that we should then come to a real acquisition of this tshuva. And that's Shovavim, that's the time we're going into. It's like in the winter, it's a colder time, it's a bit more, like we're a bit more inclined to be a bit more, small-minded. But what do? We do tshuva on the fact that this time of year where it's like a regular Tuesday and a regular day and it's a bit dark and miserable outside, and we bring chiyas, we bring energy. We bring tshuva, we bring repentance into our life. We hear what's going on in the news, the anti-Semitism, and the current issues. Excuse me. And we're not feeling so well. And what do? We do tshuva on the tshuva. In that state, when it's not like all glamour and glitz, like just happened in the Globes, and they got a mussar on their heads this week. Ben Shapiro was picking up on it, and I was like, whoa. So I was actually speaking to a yeshiva this Shabbos. I had a Shabbaton with Nissan Black, and that was the picture you see on the YouTube video, and I posted that we were together with this beautiful yeshiva, Reshit. It was a very powerful Shabbaton, and we spoke about being real and tshuva and Emuna Pshuta, and Nissan Black had his concept of not forgetting like what you're here for, your special, unique role in history, and this idea of being real with the world, the way it's gone with all lives matter, and a lot of current issues were brought up. And Ben Shapiro also was brought up. And why did we bring him up? Because he's a voice nowadays. I'm not saying that he's going exactly as the teachings of Rav Arush, and he has his path. But he did one this week quote about the Siyum Shas and how unbelievable it was, and it was unbelievable. We mentioned it last week. It was just an amazing event. And he also spoke about the concept of how the media, the world's just like missing the point, like completely. And that is the lack of realness. This is like so obvious when you hear him speaking. What you're hearing, it's just like almost like you want to cry. How misinformed is everybody? Like, at least say the facts, at least say the truth. I'm not saying his view is the ultimate truth and everyone should vote the way he is and everything else. I'm not talking politically. I'm talking just about the exposure of lack of truth. And that is very, very important on a daily level, to constantly not get confused by the media and to not get confused by all these things going on around and around, and to do tshuva on the tshuva. My point to these boys was all of them have power to be like a bench pro, because they're in that world, the more modern Orthodox world or whatever it's called, where basically in America, where Ben Shapiro is like a role model. If I start talking about Rav Arush, maybe he's not as relatable to them, even though I did speak about him, and Nissan Black is a student of Rav Arush. But to make it relatable, to make it real for people, you have to talk about things once again. And that is an example for me to tshuva on the tshuva. Because I'm taking the fact, for example, I spoke about Star Wars. There's a new Star Wars movie. I spoke about the new Star Wars movie, one, because Ben Shapiro did, but also because I was knowing that these guys, they're thinking about, like, they want to go to the film, or, there's an interest, And we have to be interesting, we have to be real, we have to be up to date, we have to know what's doing. And that's part of our tshuva and tshuva. It doesn't mean we're going to now become obsessed with whatever Star Wars world there is. We're not going to get caught up in that. It's dimyoni, it's imagination. We're going to draw out those points of truth that we all related to as a kid. If you grew up with Star Wars, that's like I did, the idea of the Force, the idea of journeying towards spirituality, the idea of fighting the darkness inside and outside, and this whole thing, like there's so many points that are relatable, that are spiritual, that we can take and do tshuva on. That's the point, that you're taking your life and all your experiences, and you're reminding, and this is a very deep teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, and Rebbe Nachman for sure brings it out, is to remind yourself that there was a Shem in every single experience, and that Shem was teaching you how to come close to him and build that relationship that we've talked about so many times before. And that really is the goal of this class, to have that, build that relationship, and that's what we're doing together. So Emuna is our future. Tshuva on the tshuva will require all of us to constantly take a real look at ourselves and our past and everything we've gone through, and to really sincerely turn it back to Hashem, to return all those experiences and talk it out with Hashem like we talk from Rav Arush all the time. And what I would really love, once again, is to build this Emuna tour. We have Yonatan Galed, and we have Rav Elgrod, and we have Rav Arush, and we have all the different other classes, myself, and the daily halach, and everything going on our sites. I'd like you guys to bring it live to your locations in South Africa, in London, in LA. We didn't get to LA yet. To get to Atlanta, all these places. You guys are listening. Share these words. Share the concepts. Share the Emuna tour. Send me emails. Give me feedback. If you want me to talk about something else, I'm happy to do so. But this is the Zman of Tshuva. This is the time where we can all really return, and that will bring the whole world to a truer understanding of their relationship with God, and a real long-lasting tshuva that's forever, that really has a kiyum. It makes sense of everything, of your marriage, of your business, of your work, your skills, your talents, your personality, your unique purpose of what you're in the world for. And that was one of the biggest goals of Breslev, is to remind everyone, what am I here for? What am I doing? To constantly ask yourself the truth, to ask these true big questions. And once again, like we see, everybody right now is learning Gemara Brochus. Everyone is connecting into this big Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, this oneness of Hashem. And to remind yourself, if Hashem truly, if you truly understand it and internalize it, you're learning in the Gemara about the Shema night and day, and how important it is as part of our Torah. That's the beginning of Shas. Taking on that unification in your day and in your night. And I spoke about it with my friends, and I'm learning it with my son, and it should be so part of our being, that oneness should make a reality, where we see the true unification of the world into positivity and oneness and godliness and love and care and all the good things that we want this world to be. It should manifest the Korav Mamish. Amen. Thank you for listening. Looking forward to see your Emuna is our future posting and sharing. Thank you.